Hello everyone, this is Sam, and today I'm going to be talking about the king and two rooks versus king endgame. And so, in this endgame, what you want to do is you want to trap the enemy king up against a border of the board so that he can't go down and that he's in a laser. So as you can see, we have two lasers right next to each other trapping the king, making it checkmate. It can also look something like this, where the rooks are on the same side of the board, but they're still the two lasers next to each other, making it checkmate. So how do we get it to be that way in the end? Well, we use something called the staircase method, or the stepladder method, where we use both of our rooks to make a smaller and smaller cage for the king. And so the first thing we can do is we can put a laser on the 7th rank. But we can either use the A1 rook or the H1 rook and bring it up to the 7th rank. And so we'll start with the A1 rook and make our laser right here. And so now the king can only go to F8 or D8. And so if he goes to F8, oh, that's not what I wanted to do. If he goes to F8, then how do you think we can finish the king off? We have a laser here, and we want to put him in a laser so that he can't escape. Alright, if you guessed rook A8, it's not quite right, because now that we have a laser here and a laser here, the king can go down, and we've opened up our cage for the king to escape. If you guessed rook H1 to F1, that's still not quite it, because our lasers still have places where the king can go. There's holes in the cage. But if you guessed rook H1 to H8, then you're right, and you just put the king in checkmate, because the king can't go down, and no matter where the king goes, he's going to be in a laser. Sometimes it's a little more difficult though, because the king might not be at the end of the board. He might be in the middle of the board. We want to do the same idea where we make a cage for him and make it so the king can't go down, and we just keep making it smaller and smaller and smaller. So the first thing we can do is we can put a laser on the 4th rank, so that way the king can't go down. And so we'll move our A1 rook to A4, and so now there's a laser here, and the king can only go to one of these squares. So maybe he'll go right there. Next, we want to make the cage even smaller, so that's on the 5th rank. And we can do that by bringing this rook up here. So now the king can't go down because we have a laser here, and he has to go up because now we have a laser right here too. So the king's got to go to one of these squares. So we'll say that he comes up here, and then we want to make the cage even smaller, and so we can bring this rook up to A6. Notice how when I'm moving my rooks, it's like they're my feet. So first I move my A1 rook and take a step. Oh, I'm having trouble here. Okay, first I use my A1 rook to take a step, and then the king moves, and then I use my other foot to take a step, and then the king moves. and then I use my other foot to take a step, and then the king moves. That's why they call it the staircase or the step ladder method, because we keep trading on and off with our feet until we have checkmate, because the king can't go down and he can't go over. So we'll watch that again. You take a step with one foot, the king moves, a step with another foot, king moves, step, king moves, step, king moves, checkmate. Sometimes the king can make it a little more complicated, however, by attacking one of your rooks. So starting back from our first position, we want to make our cage here on the 4th rank, so the king can't go down, and then maybe the king will move over here. Next, we bring our rook up here to make the cage, to put a laser here, and then the king has to move up. Now we're at a sticky situation, because if we just do what we've been doing normally and go up here and do check, even though we have our lasers next to each other, the king can capture this rook, just like this. And now it's going to be a little bit more difficult to put the king in checkmate. It's still possible, but we haven't learned that yet. And so, what we have to do in this position before the king captures our rook is we have to make it so that our rook runs away from the king. And so we can do that by bringing the rook all the way over to this square. Typically what you want to do is you want to get the rook as far away from the king as you can. But there's a problem if we move it all the way over. If we move it all the way over, now our rooks are in the way of each other, and so when I take my next step, I have a laser here, and I have a laser here, but I made a hole in my cage so the king can go down. It's kind of like trying to walk up stairs when both your feet are in front of each other. It's really hard to do. And so what we want to make sure we do is we want to make sure that we still keep our feet next to each other so that they don't get in the way. So now we still have our lasers here, we still have our cage, but the king can't attack our rook. And so he has to move over, and then we just keep going by taking our next step. Then the king has to move up, and then we move up again. We have our lasers here and here. King moves up again, and we have checkmate. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks for watching.